Okay, folks, it is 6 o'clock and I am calling the Tuesday, October 14th, 2025 meeting of the Common Council to order. We're in the council chambers. Colette will start with roll call.
Kathy Kopp,
Here.
Lynn Parrott,
Here.
Tony McFall,
Here.
Barbara Doss,
Here.
Bob Gates,
Here.
Ken Killian,
Here.
Stephen Badger.
Here.
Okay, the first item on our agenda tonight is consideration of the consent agenda. The following may be approved on a single motion due to their routine nature of previous discussion. Indicate if you want separate discussion on any item. First, we have the council minutes from September 23rd. Second, payment of bills. Third, the financial report for September. Fourth, appointments to boards and commissions. And tonight I have two, Bill Closter to the Airport Commission and Jim Schneller to Water and Sewer. There are licenses noted in your packet, 1 and 2 year operator licenses to serve and sell alcohol. We have permits, one permit request for a run walk for the Platteville Community Arboretum's annual Monster Dash 5K, which is this coming Saturday, October 18th from 9 until 11:30. And then our first meeting in November would regularly fall on Veterans Day. And so we have looked at the schedule and suggest we reschedule the Tuesday, November 11th meeting to Monday, November 10th, same time, same place, 6 p.m. here. So do I hear any motion? Ken?
Well, I would move to approve. I just wanted to find out the two. I know the one appointment. Who was the other appointment?
Bill Closter to the Airport Commission and
Okay.
Jim Schneller to the Water and Sewer.
Okay, thanks.
So you're moving, okay? We have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, motion by Ken, second by Lynn to approve the consent agenda as presented. Colette will vote.
Kopp,
Yes.
Parrott,
Yes.
McFall,
Yes.
Doss,
Yes.
Gates,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes.
Badger.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, citizens' comments, observations, and petitions, if any. I have two, we do not have the CIP on our agenda tonight. Is that correct?
We have it on to go through our official budget. It's presentation of the manager budget to Common Council. So that is open. I've got a presentation and looking to gauge with discussion. A lot of it is premising and prepping for tomorrow's workshop, but if there is time afforded at the end, it is certainly your agenda and we could talk on those items as well.
I have two people who want to talk on the CIP.
Okay.
So if that is appropriate now, I would have them talk now, since it isn't itemized on our agenda. I don't know how long your presentation is, but
Looking at about 37, 38 slides.
okay. Vicky and Amy, do you want to wait and talk at the end of the meeting, or do you want to talk at the beginning of the meeting? Just, you raise your hand. Beginning of the meeting? Oh, you just are staying in favor. Okay, Amy, you want to talk at the beginning of the meeting? So under citizens' comments, observations, and petitions, then I invite Amy C. Booth Wilson, and she wants to talk about the CIP library budget. And I will say at the same time that Vicky Sewer has registered in favor of increasing the library CIP. So Amy.
Thank you, President Doss. My name is Amy C. Booth Wilson. I live at 555 North Water Street. And I'm here tonight to speak on behalf of not on behalf of, but I'm part of the library board. And I wanted to talk for a minute about the capital improvement budget for the library. I served on the city council alongside many of you about 8 years ago when we built our new library. I think we all agree the library is an amazing resource for our community. I've been able to raise my two sons through the library, reading books, using the computers, going to after school programming. My 4th grade son this week, in fact, is going on a field trip to the library, and they're encouraging everybody to get library cards. It's such an important asset for our community, and it's so beautiful. So my request to you tonight is when you review your capital improvement budget, I'm asking that you consider elevating the library's capital improvement budget from the recommended $15,000 or $20,000 a year for the next 5 years to $50,000 a year. It's my understanding that the library is now responsible for paying for repair and maintenance on the building. And that building, which was new 8 years ago, isn't quite as new anymore. So it's in need of things like a carpet replacement, which is about $65,000, new equipment and technology. We learned recently that there's a window that's leaking, and it sounds like that's our responsibility to repair as well. So buildings age and they have things that come up. And we are hoping that the council will consider increasing the capital improvement budget enough to account for the maintenance and repairs that's now needed on this beautiful building, with the hope that this building, which in my opinion embodies so much of what is good about our community, will continue to reflect that, look that, and be that for decades to come. So thank you.
Thank you. Amy is Ken, this is not, we don't ask questions during citizens' comments. So is there any, that's the only person I've had registered to speak. Is there any announcement from a department other than the Monster Walk?
I'll have one at the end if there are no other ones.
Go
Okay.
ahead.
I do have a press release here from 49th Assembly District Representative Travis Tranel. Today, in the Wisconsin State Assembly, distinguished first responders from across Wisconsin were recognized in a First Responder of the Year ceremony during the Assembly floor session. 2025 honorees were nominated by their peers and chosen by their respective legislators to receive the award. Chief Doug McKinley of Platteville Police Department has been named the 49th Assembly District's 2025 First Responder of the Year. He was selected by Representative Travis Tranel with the concurrence of State Senator Howard Markline. Chief McKinley is a devoted husband and father who has faithfully served the residents of Platteville and Southwest Wisconsin for 35 years, known for his commitment to community-based policing and steady, compassionate leadership. He has been a cornerstone of public safety in the region. It was my honor to welcome Chief McKinley and his family to the state capitol for today's ceremony, recognizing his dedicated service to Southwest Wisconsin, said Representative Tranel. This day honors not only outstanding first responders like Chief McKinley, but all who serve in fire, EMS, and law enforcement across our state. I congratulate Chief McKinley and thank him for all he has done to help keep our communities safe. During his distinguished career, Chief McKinley rose through the ranks, serving as an officer in charge, detective, sergeant, lieutenant, and project director of Iowa Grant Drug Task Force. For over 20 years, he has led the city of Platteville's police department with integrity and dedication. Under his leadership, the department underwent significant advancements, including the construction of a new police facility, a comprehensive rewrite on the department's policy manual, and successful achievement of full law enforcement accreditations twice. In March 2026, Chief McKinley will retire, leaving behind a lasting legacy built on a simple but powerful principle: doing the right thing for the right reason. The First Responder of the Year award was created in 2019 to recognize the brave men and women who serve on our emergency services. State representatives from each legislative district seek nominations for their communities and select one individual who best exemplifies community services, selflessness, and dedication. The list of recipients from this year's include police officers, sheriff deputies, firefighters, and all levels of EMS personnel. And so I would also then like to extend congratulations on behalf of the city to our own
Standing ovation.
Chief McKinley.
Okay,
Thank you, Madam President.
Doug, I
you.
couldn't be
Nope.
as eloquent as Representative Tranel, but you've done a hell of a job for us.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I'm very humbled.
Okay, let's move on then to the reports in the packet. The first is the library board report. Lynn?
I have nothing to add other than what, I stand in agreement with what, the
Amy?
board is saying. Yep,
Okay,
I have nothing to add.
museum board. I don't know who that is right now.
Nobody here.
It's probably gonna be Steve, but he probably,
I haven't met with them.
yeah, but you haven't, yeah, library board hasn't met since you were on. Housing authority board, I have nothing to add to these. Police and fire commission, Kathy?
Nothing to add.
And water and sewer commission, Ken, do you have anything to add? Steve? Steve had his first water and sewer commission meeting, and let's just say it was kind of baptism by water. But I guess that's what baptism is, by water, right?
I thought it was a good.
He thought it was a good meeting, but we learned all about water main breaks. So probably more than we wanted to know. All right, going on to the other reports in the packet, we have the water and sewer financial report for September, the airport financial report for September, and the department progress reports. Questions? Comments? Okay, then let's move into the action items tonight. The first, ordinance 25-04, revisions to chapter 11, garbage and refuse collection and disposal. Howard.
Yes, thank you. The Wisconsin DNR has developed new rules for recycling. And one of the rules is that municipalities must amend their ordinances to comply with their new rules by April 30th, 2026. In the packet, I've included our current Chapter 11, the sample ordinance as proposed by DNR, the red line version, and then at the very back is the actual draft ordinance for you to consider that basically restates the entire Chapter 11 without the red line version. So most of these define requirements for commercial properties and outlines penalties for violations. It helps redefine what certain requirements are. And as we heard last time, most of our commercial and industrial properties, multifamily properties are already meeting those. It's just making better definitions for for enforcement. So we've also reviewed it for our own updates as well, and I'm recommending approval of ordinance 25-04.
And that ordinance starts, for those of you who have a packet on the computer, with page 215, I believe. That's after all the red lines and everything else. Anybody with questions on ordinance 25-04 that really brings us into compliance with state law? Otherwise, I'd take a motion.
I will move to approve ordinance 25-04, recycling, garbage, and refuse collection and disposal.
Second,
Okay, we have a motion to approve ordinance 2504. Colette will vote.
Cop,
Yes.
Parrot,
Yes.
McFall,
Yes.
Doss,
Yes.
Gates,
Yes.
Killian,
yes,
Badger.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Now, this is probably the more salient, this is the contract now for solid waste and recycling. This would be contract 20-25, contract for a 5-year period, 2026 to 2030. And Howard.
Okay. Our current 5-year contract with Faraday Incorporated will expire on December 31st. Our current contract calls for collection from 1- and 2-family residential properties, trash cans on Main and 2nd Street, and from city facilities. It includes spring and fall cleanup. The cost is broken down into separate costs for solid waste, garbage, and recycling in per household per month. As we all know, Faraday Incorporated is very local and provides exceptional service. And so we're recommending that we approve contract 20-25 for the years 2026 to 2030. For those who need to know, on page 247 under Appendix A, that's where I included the museums under our collection. So those are in there, and the modification of the price from Faraday's initial proposal to include the museums is in that same Appendix A. So I'm recommending approval.
Okay, questions on the contract for solid waste and recycling? So you're telling us that the per month for solid waste is 701 in 2026 and 514 for 701 for solid waste, 514 for recycling.
Correct.
Okay. So that's what we'd be looking at. That does include the downtown trash collection, city hall, police department, street department, water and wastewater departments, museum and the library. It does not include the Broski. The Broski is billed separately.
Correct.
Okay. Questions on this?
Well, it was just an additional 3 cent per, for the solid waste. That's the only thing we're looking at is, right? That's the only increase.
That was the only difference between what Faraday Incorporated proposed and what we're doing right now, because we included the museums, the
Oh.
collection for the museums.
It hadn't been included, but
It was not included before.
Okay. Other questions?
I guess I have a question on the bond requirements. Do you ever have trouble getting the 4-year bond? It's more for you than the city, I guess. Notice that I work in bonding and sometimes they have trouble getting a multi-year term. So you can split up in an annual term.
Really, he's good. Okay. Do we have a motion?
I'll move to approve contract 2025 solid waste and recycling contract 2026 through 2030.
Second,
Okay, we have a motion to approve contract 20-25 solid waste and recycling contract for the years 2026 to 2030. Colette will vote.
Cop,
Yes.
Parrot,
Yes.
McFall,
Yes.
Doss,
Yes.
Gates,
Yes.
Killian,
yes,
Badger.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, next on our agenda is authorizing a pool construction contract. You might recall that we engaged with Epic Construction as our construction manager at risk, and I see that Brad Bierman is here in the audience tonight, but Clint, will turn this to you.
Thank you, Madam President. As you had teed it up, bids were open on Wednesday, October 8th at 10 a.m. The staff recommends authorizing award of construction contract to the lowest qualified bidder, which in this case is Portson Construction. The construction site, of course, is located at the Platteville Family Aquatic Center. And if you've seen it, right now it is a very deep hole. This package will be subcontracted through the construction manager as our constructor, Epic Construction. The recommendation tonight is for authorizing again Epic Construction, our construction manager at risk, to contract with Portson Construction of Iowa. The budgetary impacts of this is we anticipate on spending the authorized $7,125,000, and this would be for the full contract with the alternates as provided. In your packets, then you're going to see a copy of the bid tab, which shows the different bids per base package and the alternates. And then you're also going to see behind that then the cost summary sheet kind of showing the costs. The total cost with alternates, of course, exceeds what we anticipate in borrowing, but in working with our partners of Splash, of which we have several in attendance tonight, we anticipate again covering the costs for not only the base project, but also all alternates that were bid upon. I would defer to Brad and Bob for questions, Madam President.
Okay. Brad, do you want to come to do you want to tell us anything or? Otherwise, are there questions from the council of Clint? So the recommendation is to go ahead and authorize the 7.125, which is the 6.9 million that we had a referendum about in April, and then the 225 that we approved out of last year's budget to get this process started in January, February, and March.
That is correct. And for memory's sake, that 225, and we discussed this again, was visualized as using it for all the preparatory works and the studies and the demolition, of which we anticipate using it all for those causes.
Any other questions?
I just want to clarify something. So with the development of this, that initial 6.9 did not include demolition.
No. Well, it was we came with a referendum question of a 6.9 to construct a new aquatic facility. We came back and had follow discussion with council on what their their expectations was with that initial 225, and that was for studies, testing, demolition, and those types of things, which will be expended.
Okay, I'm
with the
just
demolition package.
trying to clarify that the public, that the referendum was 6.9.
Right.
But the-
Referendum was 6.9 and we approved.
Because I've already
Really?
been asked, how come it's 7 something now?
The other was in November, I think. It was before the referendum that we
Right.
moved the 225 from that Fox Ridge sidewalk
Sidewalk.
project to the pool. And that was quite a few months before the referendum, and that was to get going on the pool with the study and demolition, if demolition was required at that time.
Okay, any other questions? Brad, do you want to come up and tell us how you're doing? I mean, I've had a lot of questions about the hole in the ground, so better to have you talk about the hole in the ground than me.
Thank you. So we
You
started,
start with your name and what.
Brad Bierman, owner of Epic Construction.
Okay,
So as you guys know, you authorized us to award a contract to Owens Excavating for the demolition of the current pool. So all the concrete's removed. We have maybe 60% of it at the design elevation that JEO called for us to over excavate. Obviously, we want to remove any soils that would be questionable under the pool. And initial testing's been positive at that level that we don't need to go deeper so far. So we'll cross our fingers that it continues on that path. Obviously, we have some contingency to cover that if we do need to go deeper. So the next steps, they'll start bringing fill in and start bringing rock up to get to the elevation that Owens will then turn it over to Portson. And they'll take over from there to start building the pool. So you should see lots of rock being hauled in there the next couple of weeks.
so we see hauling out and then
Yep.
we'll see. hauling-
Concrete and dirt going out and then stone coming back in to make a good base for the new pool.
What is your estimated timetable on that?
Oh,
The
it's
hauling.
aggressive. We are, the goal is to be open next summer. So what we have, I think, consistently tried to message is by July 1st. No,
Pretty aggressive.
it is very aggressive. So far, so good. We just need hopefully a positive winter.
Yeah.
Mother Nature's the one that's going to probably play the biggest role
Yeah.
in whether they can, obviously pouring concrete. If it gets super cold, it becomes more difficult. And so hopefully we'll have a nice winter.
Thank you. Okay, do I hear a motion?
Make a motion, excuse me. I move to authorize Epic Construction, our construction manager at risk, to contract with Portson Construction of Dubuque, Iowa for the base construction and all alternate bids as specified in the proposal presented for the project with the Platteville Family Aquatic Center.
A second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to authorize Epic Construction to contract with Portson. They contract with them because they're our construction manager. We don't contract directly. Epic contracts with them. So that's why the motion is in that regard. So Colette will vote.
Pop. Parrot,
Yes.
McFall,
Yes.
Doss,
Yes.
Gates,
Yes.
Killian,
yes,
Badger,
Yes.
motion carries.
Thank you. Next on our agenda, awarding a contract for building inspection services. Joe.
Thank you. Yes, the city requested proposals from inspection firms or inspectors to provide building inspection services to the city. We received 3 proposals from Total Inspection Services, which is based in Blanchardville, Wisconsin, MSA Professional Services based in Baraboo, and General Engineering Company based in Portage. So all 3 of the firms are similar in the same regard that they have multiple inspectors on staff. Each one will assign a primary inspector to the city. That inspector would be the main contact person for the public and the staff. in dealing with the company. They would do that, inspector would do the bulk of the inspections in the city, but each one of them also has additional inspectors on staff that they would bring in as needed based on specialty projects, especially a larger project, for instance, like the hospital project, they might have to bring additional inspectors in. Otherwise, it would be the primary inspector that would be involved. In each case, the city would also still process the fees. The inspector would basically issue the permits, get the paperwork ready. The city would collect the fees and do the background administration like they do now. And in regard to that, the fees at least are set up to recognize that the city is going to be doing some additional work. So total inspection services and general engineering both have a structure that they would be paid out of the permit fees directly. They would collect 90% of the fees that are paid. The city would keep 10% to cover the administrative functions that we would provide. MSA would be a little bit different. They would be compensated on an hourly or a per inspection rate. But in all three cases, the idea that would be that the fees to cover their payment for whatever company is hired would be come from the building permit fees directly. It's just a little bit more obvious for the total inspection and general engineering how that's going to be paid for. So we are anticipating to make sure that those fees are adequate to cover those fees, that our fee schedule would have to change from what it is now. So when I sent out the proposals, I did include basically what our proposed fee schedule would have been for 2026 and asked them to show what the modifications they would need to cover their fees. So I did include those. It's a new document that wasn't in your packet last time, kind of a direct comparison of all those fees on one page. And I do apologize. It's a lot of numbers that ended up being very small to get on the one document, but it does try to compare them, apples to apples as far as what that fee schedule would look like. So if you look at that document, there's 5 columns. The first one is obviously the different permit fees on the far left. Then the next one is the city draft 2026 in red at the top. So that would be my fee schedule that I was going to propose for next year before we started this RFP process. And then total inspections fees, MSA's proposed fees, and general engineering's proposed fees.
So this is page 315 in your packet if you are on the computer.
So to try, I kind of lined them up as best I could as far as, comparing them. They did not all include a number for each category. But as far as the main categories, so the first group of those, 1 and 2 family residential, that'd be for, a new home permit. So building permit, plumbing permit, HVAC, electrical, and then the fees for each one of those. So to make it a little easier to compare, kind of below those 4 categories, I did put in, in parentheses and italics, kind of summarizing those. And then I just put in for, theoretical 2,000 square foot home, new construction. So total inspection would come in at $750, MSA at $1,420, and general engineering at $847. And then I did the same thing further down below the commercial new construction. It's the same thing, building, plumbing, HVAC, electrical. And then I put in a theoretical 5,000 square foot building. Total inspection would be 1,650, MSA 3,700, and general engineering 2,300. And then the rest are all kind of just random categories. The short summary in this is overall, it appears that total inspection services would have the lowest rates going forward. General engineering would be in the middle, and then MSA would be the highest. Now, obviously, the actual fee schedule for whatever firm we would select would have to be approved by the council, but this just gives you a pretty good idea of what those would look like moving forward. The other thing I did put a document on your desk for this evening is I did some reference checks, at least for I would consider the top two firms, Total Inspection Services and General Engineering. So total inspection and, well, I should say, I guess I could explain why I'm not including MSA at this point. I think you can see their fee schedule is quite a bit higher. I think a big part of that is they are not really in the area at this point. Their closest community that they service is Sauk City. So I think in essence, we're paying them some additional road time to get here for inspections. I am a little concerned about that as far as response time, as far as responsiveness to the community to inspections, if they've got some additional travel time. I just think overall, I think that their proposed fee schedule is a little bit harder to budget for as opposed to the other two that, were strictly out of the fees that are collected. So I would essentially eliminate MSA would be my recommendation. Total inspection and general engineering are both already in the area. They both operate in a similar fashion. So total inspection seems to be kind of southern Grant County, Lafayette County, and into Greene County. General engineering is northern Grant County, Iowa County, and then further north. So total inspection, I called Monticello, New Glarus, Schellsburg, and Belmont. No concerns, issues, red flags were identified from any of the communities I talked to. General engineering, I called Lancaster, Edgerton, Prairie du Chien, and Mineral Point. And again, no concerns, issues, no red flags identified at all. So I don't think we have any concerns in that regard. From a comparison standpoint, I would say, like I mentioned, MSA, I would eliminate. Total inspection does seem to be a little bit cheaper as far as the fees that the community would pay. It wouldn't really impact the city directly. Whereas general engineering, I think, has got a little bit more experience with similar sized communities. Total inspections, all of their communities seem to be much smaller than general engineering. So those would be, I guess, the two differentiating factors between the two. But I would feel comfortable with either one of those firms moving forward. Any questions?
Questions? I see that when you called New Glarus for total inspection, they talked about total inspection has been spread thin with the number of communities being served. But they're
That
working
was
to hire.
something they
two more
identified, and
inspectors.
it's funny, talking to all three firms, they all mentioned the same thing, that they are in need of additional inspectors. So, but they did, I talked to another community, and I'm drawing a blank on which that was. They have a new inspector that he did bring in that is basically in training, so I do know they are in the hiring, expanding process. And speaking to general engineering, they are in the same boat, that they are hiring additional inspectors as well.
Anybody else with questions?
Yeah. When I purchased my home, I worked with Rick on a personal basis to get to do some of the work myself. I guess the question I would have is, in outsourcing this, Rick was fantastic in working with me and helping me out to navigate the inspection process and what was going to be expected in making changes. Will an outsource for not the contractor who's expected to know these things, but for the personal individual who maybe doesn't know what all is going to be expected in the inspection, will they work with the individual?
Yeah, that's just part of the process is whoever is involved in the construction project would be asking questions and answering questions that goes with it. I did ask all of them early in the process of how they deal with questions from property owners and non-contractors. Especially, I was concerned about things that might not be directly covered by a permit. And they all said that's just part of the business. They have to recognize that they're going to be providing an educational component to the community. And unless it's something really unusual, that's just something that they provide that they don't charge for. So I think that's just kind of part of the business of being an inspector.
Yes, Joe, I have one question. With general engineering, you said they do Fenimore, Lancaster, and Mineral Point. Do you think that's pretty important that they do similarly sized towns in the same area?
Well, I mean, to me, it was a concern just because I want to make sure we have somebody that is comfortable with a larger volume of calls and inspections. Some of the smaller communities, townships, they're just not going to have that amount of business. So obviously, each case, they're going to have to make sure they're staffed adequately to provide coverage. But that was something I was concerned about.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, any other questions? Otherwise, I guess we're to pick one tonight. I do see that general engineering does you did Lancaster, Mineral Point, Edgerton, and Prairie du Chien, so they are in our area.
Yeah, they also do Boscobel and Cassville and Bloomington.
Right. The other one does Belmont, Monticello, New Glarus, Shullsburg.
They just picked up Darlington as well. So
Okay,
Yeah, it looks like total inspection, it looks like Scott Scott Jelly is the man. Do you know whether I know they said, or did both of them say they were looking at bringing on additional folks or just
actually, they both told me that before I even sent out the
that they were looking at bringing on?
proposals. Because I initially contacted them early on when I was just trying to decide in my own mind if it was a good idea to contract out services or if we should look at hiring somebody. And so before I even issued this, just talking to them about their process and so forth, they both mentioned that they were in the hiring phase. So that was not something they said to me just in response to the RFP. That's something they were looking at doing anyway.
And then I guess the other question I have is for remodeling. Do a lot of these folks have experience? I guess, do they have experience with older houses as opposed to newer facilities?
I think that's part of the being in the business in this area. Most of their projects are going to be dealing with older homes.
okay, do you, go ahead.
Just one
Kathy.
question, Joe, it looks like both firms are available to contact by phone for appointments, but both of them in different communities indicate that they sort of have at least a half a day office hour.
Yeah, most of the communities did not have an actual set, office hours where they had to be there. I think there were a few of them that did, but most of them, they just had kind of part of their routine. They tried to come in at a certain period of time regularly so that people knew when they were going to be there.
Would you?
So that would be
feel
up to
that
us.
Would be important
That would be up to us that we could provide that in their contract. And I did explain to all of them, we haven't decided that yet, but we may want to include some set office hours moving forward.
I think that might make that process a little easier for the citizens to know that there might be somebody in the office.
Right. Yeah.
At
I mean,
some point.
I think that would be worth pursuing at least initially. So until people kind of get used to that. We did the same thing years ago with the assessor, had them set office hours. Eventually realized it wasn't needed because nobody was coming in. But until we got to that point, it was, comfort level.
At that point, if we do that, then I'm noticing most of these people are like not salaried, like probably contracted out. I don't know, just based on what I saw here. So then does that increase our costs? That would be my only concern.
No, I mean, every one of them is carrying a cell phone that is available for anybody to contact them from any community they're working with. So I assume they would try to work here and then work on whatever permits or plans or inspections they have. But if they're here during office hours and they get a call from somebody else, they're still going to be answering whatever calls they need to. Same thing while they're doing an inspection in Lancaster and they're driving home and they get a call from a contractor in Platteville, they're gonna, respond to it. So that's part of how they operate is they make sure that each of their inspectors is able to be reached directly. So they're not going through a city at a specific time, and that's the only time you can talk to them. You can reach all of them directly through text or email or a phone call.
Okay, folks, any other questions? Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion to contract for inspection services. I don't know if you want to discuss it anymore or if you want to talk about your preference or what you want to do.
You have to make a motion to pick one specific.
Yep, we have to pick
Okay.
one specific one, I think.
Thinking. I guess I would lean toward general engineering just because they do more in our in our area.
And with
and are
bigger,
similar-
yeah.
With similar style houses and
So do you,
populations. So I'll make them. Let me find a spot.
so you'll make the motion to, I guess, contract with,
Need to get to that spot. Okay, I'll make a motion to authorize the city manager to execute a contract with general engineering to provide building inspection services.
and this is for a period of how many years, Joe? 1 year? Is this a 1 year contract? I don't think it ever said.
Or said most of the contracts that they have are 2 or 3 years, but they would all be open to whatever we propose.
I don't know what was in your RFP.
I did not specify.
Okay. So Bob, do you want to specify or just an annual contract to start with?
Annual is
Okay.
fine.
1 year
I mean,
contract.
Joe, what would you prefer?
Makes no difference to me.
Okay.
I mean, I'd be okay with a year to start with, and then if we're all comfortable, then we could do a longer contract.
That
Moving
seems like
forward.
a safe way to go.
Okay.
Okay, to provide building inspection services for a 1 year term.
And that would be for the year of 2026 or when do we anticipate this starting, Joe?
But Rick is done December 1st, and I wouldn't mind having somebody on board a little bit before that, so we
Okay.
have some overlap. So I think as soon as we can get all the paperwork and agreements in place,
By November 15th or so?
mid-November would be ideal.
Okay.
I make a motion to authorize the city manager to execute a contract with general engineering to provide building inspection services for 1 year beginning in November.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Bob and a second by Tony and Kathy to authorize a contract with general engineering services for the next year for building inspection. Colette will vote.
Pop,
Yes.
Parrot,
Yes.
McFall, Doss,
Yes.
Gates,
Yes.
Killian,
yes,
Badger,
Yes.
motion carries.
Okay, next we have resolution 25-14, supporting commercial air service. I know this seems like a very unusual, maybe, action or activity. Actually, Clint, did you and I attend the opening of the Denver Air Connection or no, that was Wayne Woodars and I, that from the chamber that attended when Denver Air Connection started coming to the Dubuque Regional Airport. They've had some issues with commercial air traffic, and so this is this is not a request for money. This is just a request for.
Yes, they're looking
Endorsement.
for endorsement. The Dubuque Regional Airport is a vital transportation hub, of course, for our tri-state area. The city of Dubuque has undertaken significant efforts to restore and maintain commercial air service, including partnership, as you'd mentioned, with the Denver Air Connection and the formation of DBQ Air, which is a nonprofit coalition of both public and private stakeholders. Commercial air service, as we mentioned, is essential for the Dubuque area to remain eligible for federal airport improvement program funding, which supports critical infrastructure and projects such as a $40 million taxiway alpha reconstruction. Loss of scheduled services would jeopardize Dubuque's eligibility for such funding. So Resolution 2514 expresses the City of Platteville support of Dubuque's efforts to retain and expand commercial air services and authorize the city manager to collaborate with regional partners in promoting these efforts. Attached with this document, you're seeing then a copy of the resolution, which again is be it therefore resolved, the Platteville Common Council authorizes the city manager to work with the city of Dubuque and other regional partners to promote and aid these efforts. Then there's also kind of a letter of explanation coming from Michael Van Milligan, city manager, which kind of describes the city of Dubuque's current efforts as they're kind of giving what is called guaranteed funds to help support, while they hope that this continues to grow back into a solvent commercial industry. Madam President.
So questions?
So that would primarily be efforts on your part, right, Clint?
Yeah, I'm in kind of reading between the lines, the document prepared by the city manager down there is both promoting Dubuque to invest in it with their funds, and then also encouraging then that private partners also consider investing into it to, again, help subsidizing through next June to see if other opportunities come about to try to help continue floating Denver air until they can build up enough base, is the hope, where they're solvent.
For our part, there's not a financial impact.
No, nothing coming from our coffers and tax dollars. Time potentially spent by your city manager and helping educate and promote.
I'm just saying, I want to, what are we expected to give them?
And they're not looking for a monetary contribution from the city.
I think they're looking for people to say, oh, have you considered flying from Dubuque? Did you know you can fly from Dubuque to Chicago? And right now they're actually offering a $100 voucher.
So
Yeah.
It's actually cheaper to fly from right now from Dubuque to O'Hare than it is to fly from Madison to O'Hare.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
And it's much more convenient.
Much more convenient. So, and I think it is important to have commercial air service. So.
Yeah, I'm with them. I'm just trying to see what are they looking for us to do specifically?
So again, kind of
mouth it. I mean,
Yep, word of mouth.
Yeah, the action language provided by the city manager was, I respectfully recommend that the mayor and city council dedicate 2.4 million to minimum revenue guarantee. And then it goes on to say, I further respectfully recommend that the mayor and city council put out a challenge to the business community to provide $750,000 of the minimum revenue guarantee for Air Denver. So I think they're looking for efforts again to help promote as a region to, if this is important to you and your business and your organization, please help us come and get this thing off the ground. Can I use that as a fun?
Yeah, with an airplane, I think you can use that off the ground. I think you can.
Thank you.
So just so I understand, so what they're looking for is not necessarily tax dollars, but community dollars
Right.
from
And
businesses that will benefit from having
yeah,
transportation nearby.
what I would be doing with this too is if we pass a resolution, I would be passing it on to congressional and our congressional representatives and our senators to try to help promote their cause and looking for federal dollars as well.
then I'm not gonna say that. No.
Okay. Any more questions? Otherwise, do I hear a motion?
I'll move to approve resolution 25-14, supporting continued commercial air and authorizing the city manager to work with the regional partners to promote and aid in these efforts.
So we have a motion by Kathy and a second by Ken to adopt resolution 25-14, supporting continued commercial air service at the Dubuque Regional Airport. Colette will vote.
Hap,
Yes.
Harrod,
Yes.
McFall,
Yes.
Doss,
Yes.
Gates,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes,
Badger,
Yes.
motion carries.
Okay, that's the end of our action items for tonight. So we will now move into information and discussion, and we will start with auditing services for the years 25, 26, and 27, with 2 optional additional years. Nicola.
You. It's been a couple of years since the city has invited proposals for auditing services. And so the city invited qualified independent auditors licensed to practice in the state of Wisconsin to submit proposals for the provision of auditing services for the financial years ending 2025, 6, and 7, and then, as you said, with the option to extend for 2 additional years. We received proposals from Bauman and Associates, Clifton Lawson Allen, Johnson Block and Company, and Kerber Rose SC. We formed a staff committee to review proposals consisting of myself, city manager, and accounting and finance manager even, and we each reviewed and scored the proposals based on the criteria of qualifications and experience, audit approach, completeness of response and proposal format, and quality of references. A score was also calculated for fees, with the lowest fee receiving the highest score for this category. The criteria scores were averaged and added to the fee score for an overall score for each proposal, and I provided the scoring matrix in the packet. After having conducted the review, scoring, and discussing the proposals, we are recommending the selection of Johnson Block as the auditors for 2025 through 7, with the optional 2 years of renewal. The recommendation is based on Johnson Block's overall score, their extensive knowledge of the City of Platteville financial operations, their strong working relationship with the city, their local presence in Platteville as residents and visitors, their regional presence with offices in Mineral Point, as well as Madison, Viroqua, and La Crosse. And then it doesn't hurt that they have several alumni of UW Platteville on their staff. The budget fiscal impact of this recommendation is that the cost of auditing services will slightly increase over the last proposal that we received a couple of years back, and those audit fees are included in the 2026 budget.
In your score, you never included the, in order for us to see the fee schedule for each, we'd have to go into each proposal. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, any questions about this? So the recommendation is Johnson Block. They have been our auditor for, I don't know how long. I don't think, since I've been on the council, we've had an auditor. So they've been our auditor for quite a while. Questions? This is not up for voting tonight. It would be on the agenda to vote next meeting. If you have additional questions relative to the recommendation of Johnson Block or the fee schedule or any of that, please contact Nicola prior to the next meeting, and I'm sure she would be more than happy to share her extensive knowledge.
I don't know about the extensive part, but I'll do what I can.
All right, then we're going to go to the second of our information items, which is the presentation of the city manager operational budget to the Common Council. Is that correct?
We're looking at the budget in kind of its entirety. We're going to be focused heavily on the operational component we haven't touched yet tonight. But then as we kind of round it all together, it's got numbers in there from your CIPs and your borrowings and such. So in front of you tonight, you're going to see a copy of the slides. And the intent is we're going to go through the slideshow presentation here tonight with you folks, which again is the very high view of what the story is behind the numbers. At the conclusion of the meeting, we'll hand out thank you. At the conclusion of the meeting, Nicola has the actual budget documents. And for those of you familiar with those, that's the many, many line items of where all your expenditures and revenues and all those things are. So tonight, I'm hoping to show, though, what is the story behind these numbers and what do we want to talk and engage about rather than kind of approaching it as just line by line to kind of paint what is happening and what are the changes coming out of last year. So the city budget quote for this year, I could not find a good quote from a human being regarding investment or reinvestment. So I went to one of my best friends, Copilot, and it came out with the best investment a community can make is in itself, in its people, its places, and its potential. Thought that was quite brilliant. Your city budget timeline, we continue to work through that. Presentation of the city manager budget is what we're doing tonight. Tomorrow, we're going to convene at 6 o'clock over at PD then to kind of go through line by line, but really hopefully trying to focus off building conversations we have tonight to prep for tomorrow. And then we do have an optional October 28th review as well before we post our hearing entering into November. As a review of the basics, we'll kind of go through that again to kind of get, again, a general understanding of what we're talking about with our different budgets and tools that we plan on talking about. We'll review on some of the changes and the tenets. We'll then show the big proposals and changes that warrant discussion, and then kind of summarize again with the impacts of what it all means. So for those of you, certainly remember that our goal is to put together a balanced budget where all of our different borrowings is balanced with all of our many different expenditures. And that is which we're going to be trying to arrive at, again, through all the many lines that you'll look at tomorrow. The expenditures are kind of broken down into operating budget, which is going to be heavily discussed tonight. We talked about CIP. We've had multiple discussions on debt service and how that works. And we're going to also touch a little bit on TID and how that impacts with the city. The first one is kind of operating revenue. To put that in a personal equivalent, managing your own checkbook at home, your monthly pay must cover your ongoing personal expenses, such as food, clothing, and other different operating type of expenses. So a conversation that typically came up during like the ARPA time when we had one-time funding solutions coming down is that you don't want to plug in one-time funding solutions for reoccurring operational monthly expenses, right? If you win the lottery and you cash a $100 lottery ticket, you're not going to go buy a new cell phone plan, which is going to cost you $100 for sequential months and have reoccurring expenses that you can't cover. In context of debt service, that's kind of more of taking out a mortgage for a loan or a car. To put that in a household equivalent, city borrowing notes, as we talked about with our last conversations with CIP, we have an estimated equalized value of $1,004,711,500 of total equalized valuable in our taxable jurisdiction. The state imposes a 5% limit that we can borrow on that, so we can borrow up to roughly $50 million. Our principal outstanding in 2025 is going to be estimated $28,103,753, or 56% of our legal capacity. And that is up 21% from the end of last year, but that is going to include, though, the borrowing for the pool, which we intend to do here in the next couple meetings. City debt establishes a 3.5 equalized value that we can borrow up to. And so that number is, of course, is a little bit lower at about a $35 million. And as we talked about, we're approaching about 80% of that going into 2026. Now, CIP funding, as we talked in our last meeting, comes from several different sources. We can transfer from general funds if we have extra reserves. Essentially, if you have extra operational expenses, you're storing that up and investing it in a larger investment. We have carryovers from previous years. We also have short-term borrowing, which is typically not something that we engage here. It's kind of using a bit of a credit card approach if you get into financial constraints that you can get into. We have base reserves where you're borrowing from one fund potentially against another fund to kind of move some monies around to make it work. I think we've engaged in this once in a while with kind of borrowing against utilities for short-term types of approaches. And then we also have long-term borrowing solutions, which typically we do with GO notes. GO bonds were very popular, but we had a legislative change a few years back that allow us a longer lifespan and amortization on notes, and the notes offer us a little bit more flexibility. So we typically engage with general obligation notes. We also do different revenue bondings and such, though, when we have our utility conversations. Your TIF districts, you have to kind of visualize these as your separate businesses, essentially, that you have. Authorities and responsibilities are kind of situated on a municipality to make the right financial decisions with those funds. For those of you that are not terribly in tune with tax increment districts and tax increment financing, you're establishing kind of a base level when you put this district on what the property value is. You're hoping that growth happens there through constructions, and then that increment or that difference, a city is able to determine if they want to reinvest that in such things like streets, sewers, or typically things or other economic promotions. Again, the authorities and responsibilities kind of land on the municipality, so it's then the responsibility of the city to make sure that floats, or the city is left kind of holding any type of debt on a closure of a TID if it is not solvent. Other big drivers as we talk about our budgets, of course, are operating expenses of salaries, benefits, mandates that come down to us, elections, contracts. Those kind of steer a lot of our expenses. Our different revenues that we typically talk about are state aids, which we'll touch on. Hotel tax is another one that comes down to us, revenues related to new development again. And then other conversation points that we'll be having tonight, of course, is on the debt service, TID support, and expenditure restraints, which we'll have a slide dedicated about towards the middle of the presentation. We took a look at this as we talked in CIPs. These are our tenets, and we know right now we've kind of bent some of these in order to make a budget fit for our needs in 2026. We are still maintaining the less than 3.5% of total equalized value for debt, but we know we're approaching at 80%. The two of the ought to tenets of borrowing more than previous year's retired principal, we've kind of bent that in context of adding a fire engine to a borrow and also a pool. A practice of primarily designated CIP borrowing for street reconstruction. Again, our needs have kind of grown past that. So going into 2026, we've kind of bent those again. And as we go into a 2027 budget, we'll have to reevaluate and see if these are things that we want to hold true as we start building that budget. Another change, or maybe a previous change to kind of come back around to and address again, is our Act 12. With Act 12, we had a shared revenue from the state, which provides us 1 penny on a nickel that comes down and is shared with local government. Again, though, with this, we have to ensure there's a maintenance of effort, and the city works with our partners with fire and also with our ambulance service in ensuring that we're showing a maintenance of effort and not reducing those services to maintain eligibility and not get penalized for that revenue stream that's coming down to us. Again, this is the specified intentions of Act 12 as supplemental aid for law enforcement, fire protection, emergency medical services, emergency response communication, public works, courts and transportations is what the intent of that was by our state legislators. A big change as well this year is the closure of TID 5. If you remember, we took action on this a few months back, and I would maybe give Director Maurer a chance to kind of explain to us TID 5 and how it is impacting our tax base and our total levy concept, if you would, please.
Sure. So we're very excited that we have a very high-performing TIF district that we closed in 2025. And what that meant is that the growth in that TIF tax base was added to the tax roll in 2025. It grew from $29,500 in base value to $60.86 million by the end of 2024. So that's a big win for the city and for all of the jurisdictions who benefit from taxes, that being ourselves, the city, as well as the school district, Grant County, and Southwest Tech. So also during its life, TIF 5 was able to donate surplus increment to underperforming TIF 7, meaning that TIF 7 is now projected to cover all of its project costs, TIF 7 being our downtown district. And as well as that, with the closure of a TIF, state statutes allow a one-time increase in the levy limit. When I say one time, it's permanently increased. And that is a factor or a calculation which turns out to be 3.15% that allows us to increase the levy limit. And then also by closing the TIF, we have created capacity under Wisconsin's 12% rule, which would allow the potential creation of new TIDs.
Excellent. Thank you. A conversation that many municipalities and counties across the state are having right now is in regards to levy limit. And I'm sure Kathy at Grant County, you've probably drummed on this quite a bit. It is a conversation that we have not touched on because of our financial position, and we should be very excited about that. At the same time, that is a conversation that is creeping upon us. So I've asked, again, Director Mauer has prepared 2 slides here tonight that kind of touch on that and helps us understanding trajectory and what we might be able to kind of do, if you would, please.
So this slide here just tries to simplify how the state determines what our levy limit will be. So you see the base levy that they start with, which is based on last year's levy. There's an adjustment there that they make based on the personal property aid that they send us. And then they add an amount that is a calculation of net new construction. So they determine what net new construction is for the city of Platteville, and that's based on a percentage. And what you can see is that yields us an allowable increase of $13,661, which is not very much in light of a total levy of around $5 million or $6 million. So we don't get much from net new construction, but we do, as I mentioned in the previous slide, get a little bump from the TIF 5 closure, and that equates to $148,113. So we are allowed to increase our levy limit by those 2 amounts. Now, there is another part of the law, which most of you have heard about, which is the debt service adjustment. And the law allows a municipality to tack on to the top of the levy limit the amount that the city has to pay for principal and interest on its debt in the coming year. And so we have used that since about 2015. We have been using that debt service adjustment to enable us to exceed the allowable levy limit. And so in the 2026 proposed budget, that adjustment would be $1,465,862. So if we go to the next slide, what I present here is a visual of what does that look like. So on this graph, the yellow line is our use of the debt service adjustment, and the dark brown line is our total available debt service, so how much we pay in principal and interest over the years. So you can see that we have been able to respond to some of the things that have been going on in the world and in our city over these past 8 or 9 years by using our debt service adjustment. But you can also see that the gap is narrowing. So in other words, we are beginning to approach maxing out our debt service adjustment. And what that means is if we get to a point where we have maxed it out, then we would be constrained to increase our levy, which has all the components, including the CIP levy and so forth. We would be constrained by the slide prior, which is net new construction. And if we had a TID closure, which doesn't happen but once in a blue moon, we would have that bump as well. So we do need to be mindful of this and plan out our coming years so that if we were to need to close that gap, that we would be well aware in advance and that we could plan for it. I would also say that we are in a much better position than many municipalities in the state of Wisconsin. Many municipalities have long since maxed out any available options they have for their levy limit. And so they are constrained by almost a flat levy limit allowance from year to year, while costs, as you know, are increasing substantially. And so it's my opinion that pressure on the state legislature is increasing to do something about that, but it's not guaranteed by any stretch. So I think that perhaps there'll be some relief in the coming years, but in the meantime, we need to plan carefully as we approach that maxing out of our debt service adjustment.
Yes, in the world of stick and carrots, this is kind of the stick that the state has put in there, and this is your ceiling, and you must stay underneath it. Now, they do also offer a bit of a carrot with an expenditure restraint program that Director Maurer will also explain, as she is quite in tune to this as well.
Thank you. So you may have heard of this program as well, the Expenditure Restraint Incentive Program offered by the state. And essentially, what the state is doing is saying if you limit your spending and only increase it by essentially inflation, then you will earn an award from the state. And so the city has always qualified for this award or this incentive since it was introduced. And the amount that we are receiving in 2026 for our last year's budget, well, I guess it would be the budget we passed last year that we're currently living in, so the 2025 budget, it was a payment of $97,453. So that's more than 2% on a tax rate increase that we are earning from the state. So it's something that it's significant and we don't want to lose it if we can possibly avoid it. So as I said, we are essentially limited to inflation, which is CPI that's told us by the state. And then there's a factor of net new construction. But as you saw before, our net new construction is very small, so it really doesn't help with how much we can increase general fund expenditures is how it's measured. So this is a little different measure. It's not on our levy or our levy growth. It's on the growth in general fund expenditures and then also the growth in levies that we send to other funds like the CIP fund or the Brosky fund. So any levies that we apply in other places other than the general fund are also added in this calculation. So because of the closure of TIF 5 and the additional state aid that we are receiving in 2026, that enables us to respond to inflationary pressure by increasing the expenditures in our general fund. However, what that does mean is that we would not, with our current level of general fund expenditures in our 2026 draft budget, we would not qualify for the expenditure restraint program. But there are some workarounds so that we can qualify. Those are sanctioned both by Ellers and by our auditors, which is that there are some programs that we are currently including in our general fund that could legitimately be moved to a special revenue fund. And if we do that, we would then decrease the expenditures in our general fund, and thereby we would qualify for expenditure restraints. So it is my recommendation that we do that, and I am recommending that we move ambulance services, so both the revenue and expense, which is a wash, the same, are currently in our general fund. So we can move those to a special revenue fund and drop our general fund expenditures. And the other one happens to be building inspection services, which we're also now going to have as essentially neutral, budget neutral, so revenues meeting expenditures. So we can move that also to a special revenue fund. Keeping an eye on the future, there are some other programs that we could move if we needed to in the future to continue to qualify for expenditure restraint. And those would be refuse recycling, library, museum, or aquatic center. And as I mentioned, this is something that I have run by Ellers and Johnson Block just to make sure that everything is on the up and up.
Excellent. Thank you. So through some accounting practices, we can transfer some funds into specialized special revenues and still be eligible for more revenue through the state. As a review, and we saw this just a few weeks ago, again, this is our last projection from Ellers showing where we're currently at, our percentages of availability. Our process for the budget matches much like CIP. We started with the release of budget guidance, and some of those items we took a look at here at the council floor and had an information and discussion items. The Director of Administration released then the operational worksheets that went out for directors to complete. The Director of Administration compiled these worksheets when they were returned back in. There was presentations to myself and the Director of Administration reviewed, and then we give notifications to the directors on decisions and changes that may be made in the recommendation that comes to you as the council. And then heavily tomorrow, we're looking for your guidance on making adjustments to that and finalizing a product then to bring back for a full vote. The 2026 process and request, again, some of the features in that initial guidance that went out back in July was to call for a 2.5% wage increase for general employees, plus eligibility steps by the Carlson study and wage schedule. 3% wage increase for WPPA employees. Those are our folks in law enforcement that are unionized. Guidance on no more than a 6% increase in health insurance increase. And then, of course, we had anticipated changes in inflationary pressures for costs for our operational expenses. And specific guidance was also given out to departments. The overall picture then that came back from the initial requests from departments arrived at numbers like this. We had a request for use of approximately $3,370,643 of levy use. Our debt service for general was $1,513,102. Debt service for the fire station was $196,450. The capital improvement fund of $500,000 and Brodsky Center Fund of $48,443, totaling to that number, which is essentially a 4.5% increase. And you can see the total amount change in comparison to the 2025 levy. As we start then talking about then this individual budgets, and again, how we kind of laid this out is in very broad strokes. And I'm anticipating that you folks will be taking notes on, I have questions about this and I want to know more about this. And when we go through all of these, then we'll kind of circle back and say, in preparation of tomorrow's meeting, what are you looking at for further information or questions that you have to best provide answers and such to you? So the first budget is administration and city manager budget. You can see the overlap of the ones that those cover. The big changes in these budgets, as we talked about, is the TID 5, which adds again approximately $60 million to city assessed value in providing capacity for an increased levy without increased rate. We also have increases in appropriations for council committee boards, training and travel. The lines are also going to reflect an increase for paid election workers, and there is 4 elections coming up into the next 2026 year. It's going to also reflect proposed changes in providing and provider for a city assessor. We're currently contracted with Accurate Appraisal, and the budget is built right now with a recommendation for moving forward with Associated Appraiser. If you remember, in the state of Wisconsin, there's 2 appraisers. And you kind of we're looking for Associated to kind of come from a more of an east home base to potentially help us here in Platteville. There's also, as we just talked about, a proposal for a renewal with the existing auditing firm, Johnson Block. It also reflects then additional CIP budgeting, tracking, and a forecasting software. As we add more and more CIP types of projects and we add more years of CIP, trying to continually keep up to date with the progress on those individual projects, closing out those projects, and trying to forecast future projects for financial planning purposes. We're trying to alleviate that and get more and more accurate as we build on that program. And then this budget also reallocates funding from the 53818 paper publication and adjust that funding for social media archiving. Right now, we have many social media archiving platforms, and it is appropriate if we have a request for an open records to provide those data sources to requests. And our means of doing that right now is limited. So this would be an archiving system, much like our email archiver, to be able to put those in a format and do more of a more efficient query to provide open records requests on those bits of public documents. For the police department, we moved the social media archiving software as requested by PD into the administrative budget. The PD budget also increases costs associated with a language line and evidence tracking system. We are awaiting responses back on a grant to fund vests, which may impact our future budgets as we're trying to get federal support and push for that. The PD budget also increases expenses with Grant County for the tower maintenance portions of it. And then we're anticipating movement of the code enforcement officer to this budget. It's currently housed in community development, and we're anticipating in May to move that and to include those duties on a community or one of our community officers. The main impacts of this is that it will maintain the current functions and staffing with the exception of code enforcement officer duties. There is still concerns of operating with 20 officers versus 21 officers when we get into situations of extended family leave or we have vacancy in transition. It does put a pinch on our force to be able to continue providing 24/7 patrolling and protection. And then we're also awaiting potential findings of a dispatch study combined with Grant County. I believe we've put out for the actual grant now and waiting to hear back on how that goes. That may have impacts in a 2027 or a 2028. For the fire department, we have increases in their budget for software expenses. There's increase in safety uniform replacement expenses. And then you'll also see increases of revenue as part from townships and matching the increases in overall cover expenditures. So as our costs go up and the city's portions of revenue have to go to cover that, we're also, then our other partners, the townships, are also going up to help cover that. The impacts in their budget is they're maintaining their current staffing levels. There's the increased software capabilities allow for more functions, tracking and reporting. We're keeping pace with our turnout gear of not exceeding 10 years, which is the lifespan. So essentially this increase will get us another 5 sets as we try to continually replace 5 sets each year. And then the budget reflects a continued volunteer model without any addition of full-time or part-time positions. The public works budgets, which are several, and they're pretty hefty budgets, but the main features that you're going to see in there is in the admin budget, there is the removal of a large format printer. There's an increase in the storm line for increasing storm sewer allotment for small tubes to help replace our storms in vacant lots and backyards. Streetlights, there is a reduction in the data processing. We've dropped a cellular plan is now that we have all of our poles, I believe now on fiber, which helps reduce the costs. Building services, we're utilizing some CIP contingencies to absorb some risks. So we did some drops in some operational building services funds, and then fee changes. There's a proposal for changes in cemetery plots and burials to reflect what we're seeing as trends across comparable cities throughout the state. The impacts on this is it is going to also, though, incorporate a transition to an assistant public works director from a utility superintendent. And this is kind of in tune to the conversations we have on what is the city doing about continuity. For several different years, we've tried to figure out on how to just add an assistant director of public works, and it's not financially feasible, but we're hoping to kind of displace a water superintendent, bring many of those skill sets into that position up to the mothership here to also be learning about public works in its entirety, and then promoting one of our plant operators to a lead water plant operator to help cover down on some of the responsibilities and authorities at the utility. We're also then discontinuing large format printer capabilities. We'd be relying on our vendors, whether Delta 3 or Southwest Regional Planning Commission, to help us in our large prints. But it's seen as a more viable option than replacing a giant printer. And we do, of course, have remaining concerns yet with deferred streets and building maintenance. With the library, the budget includes an increase to allow for the addition of a library specialist and 10 additional hours this week. It has a reduction in several operation lines to reappropriate for this library specialist. It has an increase There's an increase in the admin insurance budget reflecting prorated insurance costs for the library, which doesn't land on a library budget. It's going to land in our admin budget with our other insurance expenses, but wanted to make sure that there was transparency there. And then we're also proposing to add community room usage fees. So the impacts on here is to add an additional 10 hours of library specialists to the department. There's continued concerns with turnover and recruitment. We have continued concerns on maintaining hours of operations, and there is continual conversations on changes in programmings and hours. At the museum, you'll see reductions in some expenditure lines, matching reductions in some revenue lines, and this is predominantly around sales and inventories coming through the shop. There is a slight reduction in the Friends of Museums donation, but seen to still cover the combined collection management and education specialist position. If you remember last year, or maybe even the year prior, there was a request and a plea to combine 2 half-time positions into a full-time. The agreement that was worked out is that the Friends, though, would cover the added benefit packages that would be associated with those, as now are qualifying for WRS and health insurance and those types of things. The impacts of the budget changes is that they will continue to maintain current functions and staffing. There is continued concerns with their maintenance services and display rotation and collections maintenance, and we have continued efforts to address deferred facility maintenance. Parks, Forestry, and Recreation. You're going to see in here the Aquatic Center that we're going to be reintroducing mechanical and chemical expenses, and we're also going to be anticipating a full staff for the season. We just talked about an anticipated opening date of July, which is reasonable, but we're going to still try to staff and have funds available in the hope and pray that we can open it up when school is out and to have funds and staffing lined up for that. You're also going to see in here a proposal to introduce annual membership fees to the City of Platteville senior citizens attendees, but it does offer a Platteville citizen discount and a scholarship opportunity. As we talk about year after year, this is one of the only programs that does not require any type of a service or a participation fee, and that if folks are having financial hardships, that is okay. We have a scholarship opportunity like we do with our other programmings that we would be able to hopefully help cover down on their fees. And then we're hoping through this too, as well as to track some of the demographics and some of the residential living addresses to understand how many folks that are using the senior center are citizen of Platteville participants and patrons, and how many folks are coming from greater communities and townships and adjacent cities. The Brodsky Center, you're going to see an increase of city usage in that budget for the 2026 election cycle as one use. And then also in logging the hours, we see a decrease in staff allocation. And so we're going to have levy support there. The impacts of this total budget, though, is it's going to maintain the current functions and staffing with restoration of the Aquatic Center operation. It maintains current funding levels for seasonal labor. I will say, though, that we ran short in 2025 with our seasonal labors because we had some fantastic grass growing weather throughout most of the early summer. I think even our seasonal budgets at streets also kind of trickled off, but we're going to keep it status quo going into the next year. And we're anticipating some other program changes based on participation. From community development, from planning, we see increase in professional services to allow for the potential of a demolition on Sickle Street. It has been an ongoing project in which we are seeking support through where we are at that with, we have engineering lined up for the appraisal on the house to try to do condemnation potentially and take that into possession and raise it. Building inspections, again, we have anticipation of a contract services to replace in-house hours. So you are going to see a reduction in levy dollars going towards a salary, but we'd see increases in service fees to cover those costs associated with the building inspections. Code enforcement officer, as we talked about, is moving to the PD budget. And then we also have then supplemental affordable housing program that is put in there with the addition of the Roundtree proceeds. The impacts on this is you're seeing changes in service delivery, again, from building inspections, but we're also anticipating that we have more backups and more specialty services. The code enforcement moves in May, and then we also have displaced costs, as we mentioned, with fees. Okay, transitioning now to our economic partners. This slide here kind of points out our 5 economic partners that we have. The proposed allocation to their changes to their budget going forward into 2026, the source of where those funds come from, and the anticipated impacts or justifications with it. You'll see it is proposed that PADIC at a 3% increase to their budget. Grant County Economic Development is higher than that at a 5%. And justification for that being that Grant County Economic Development has not asked for an increase in their membership fees since 2007. They've been managing a lot of their increases through such things as grant applications and using administrative fees to help put those together to fund their operations. Our Chamber of Commerce is based on formula from room tax, and that has been flowing up, but that is dependent on a formula that comes through, again, the changes in room tax. Our business incubator, it is proposed for a 3% increase, and our economic partners at Main Street program, it is proposed to have a 3% increase. Okay, moving into some of more of the big impacts on our budget is health insurance. At the end of the second quarter, we were at an 86.6 medical loss ratio. So that means in June of this last year, on track of what our premium payments were in comparison to what our total expenditures going out in medical care was, we came under 100%, meaning that we're trending lower and paying funds in than expenditures out, which is good when it comes to renewal. The initial budgets, as we mentioned in our guidance, was built at a 6% increase in health insurance renewal. Through the help of our HR manager and our brokers at TRICARE, we were able to negotiate with Quartz, our current provider, down to a 5.5% renewal for the existing plan as designed. It didn't quite happen that easy. We did go out for bid with 2 other carriers. One of the carriers did come back in under by a couple of percents, but in context of doing a full change to a different carrier and losing the different specialty care doctors that you might have access to, and also then having to change medical insurance cards, and then also having to change some of our financial pieces on doing allocations of where monies go. The recommendation is to stay with the Quartz going into 2026 at a renewal of 5.5. And then if next year, if we receive a renewal again from a competitive carrier, we may consider that. So that is always maintains as an option for us. Vehicle insurance and fleet management, we're anticipating that costs will continue to go up on our vehicles as well as increase in our lease. Due to our hail event, we had full intentions of trying to crack the nut and solving on what the buyout costs were for our fleet management with Enterprise. When hail event happened in April, it kind of complicated our entire fleet of understanding what damages were and what our obligations were for fixing leased vehicles and some of these other mechanics. So we do not have a full proposal on how to exit with a leased vehicle fleet. Wages and salaries. In looking at the studies and trends, the budget now is built at a 3% cost of living increase. Initial guidance again was at a 2.5%. As we worked through and began looking at the trends and datas, and a recognition that also our union contract is calling for a 3% as negotiated, the budget is currently billed with a 3% in. To put this in kind of context on data points, we historically referenced the CPI for the Bureau of Labor Statistics. This is a federal number that comes out. You'll see in the 2026 column there a 2.9. And this is a real number, but it comes from an August number. It's not a January number like the one below that with our Wisconsin Employee Relations number there is a 2.6, and that is a projection number for January. And then our wages at a 3%. So it is higher than the 2 CPI benchmarks. But the reason I'm still recommending this is looking over the last 6 years of trend, we still fall below the average of total increase. And that another consideration too is I did shave off 2018 and 2019 because those were also years in which we were well under a CPI and kind of skewed it even more. So recommendation is for a 3% COLA and for steps. And the question typically comes up annually is, how are you calling for a 3% increase plus steps? Well, if you remember with the Carlson study and their recommendations back in 2024, they benchmarked us for what they considered market value. And at the time, we deferred on implementing a full market value because it was a very hefty cost to get positions to what was considered market value. And instead, we implemented a step process in which employees can incrementally try to achieve a benchmark of what is considered market value through longevity in several years to reach that. So the recommendation is for 3% this year to age that schedule and keep that schedule up to cost of living increase, and then still allow for employees by design of by the wage schedule and what their longevity is, making them eligible to take steps and advancements in that schedule. A review then on the changes to personnel. We're anticipating then 10 hours of a library specialist to be added, and this is a $9,619 total impact, but we had changes in some of our operational expenses to bring that down. Public Works, the Assistant Public Works Director, this is an $8,123 increase. But as kind of specified in there, you have to imagine now we're taking a water and superintendent, which is 100% utility, and now putting a percentage of their time into levy type of expenses and levy type of work. So there's a slight shift in where the funding sources come for that position. And then also with our lead water plant, there's an increase to reflect then the added responsibilities to that lead water plant operator position. We have a decrease in levy for the community development building inspector. And then we'll have a slight decrease in total budget for the code enforcement inspector as that's being, again, carried by our community officer. So with all these changes and the recommendations and switches that arrived at through the city manager review, the numbers look like this at the end. There's also the addition, as we work through this discussion, we added the pool debt levy that is also in there. And the total number then comes to $5,870,471. This ends up being a total of an 8.9% increase in levy. But the recommendations for the budget is with an estimate of a 3.3 increase in the rate, because again, we're adding that capacity of TID 5 that gets put into the formula. So while we're increasing at 8.9% of total levy, the tax rate is a 3.3% increase to the average taxpayer. Did I say that all correctly, Nicola?
Yes.
And then I'm going to defer to Director Maurer to lead us through some of the data and analytical points to kind of paint the picture in graphics.
Thank you. So here we just have a couple of pie charts which demonstrate the split of our general fund revenues. So this is just the general fund and just revenues. And you can see there that the large majority of our revenues is coming from intergovernmental revenues and charges. So that's a shared revenue from the state and municipal services payment, expenditure restraint, those kinds of funding sources. And then next after that is property taxes. And you can see that from the 25 budget to the 26 budget, the intergovernmental is staying the same. Property taxes are slightly increasing from 31%, decreasing from 32% to 31%. And then we have other taxes and public charges for services, which is 7%, and assessments, permits and fines. And that is increasing slightly from 2% to 3%, reflecting the building permit increase. And there on the bottom, you see a comparison of 24, 25, and 26 revenue sources from year to year. And then moving on to the next slide, general fund expenditures compared from year to year. So the largest segment is for public safety, but we're showing that there's a slight decrease in the total segment for public safety from 40% to 39%. General government is increasing from 16% to 17%. Culture and recreation is the same at 22%. Public works is the same at 17%. And then health and human services and conservation and development are also unchanged. And again, below you have a comparative there from year to year on those different categories.
Thank you. So again, the main impacts in the summary then of what we're talking about here tonight is the proposed 2026 budget operates with a 3.3% estimated increase in the mill rate. The proposed budget operates with a 3.8% increase to the general fund operating levy, with a 15.2% increase to the debt service levy, a 25% increase to the CIP levy, and a 5.4% decrease to the Broski levy. The 2025 budget set a $6.43 tax per 1,000 of assessed value. This 2026 budget sets an estimated $6.64 tax per $1,000 of assessed property value. There are several variables in flux with valuation before the finalized 2026 mill rate will be established. After consciously holding the city's levy increase down in 2024, if you remember, that's when our shared revenue came in from the state. So in recognition of those efforts from the state, we held our line at 2024. And then we responded with increased cost in 2025. We're trying to optimize then with a TID 5 closure and to also, though, incorporate the fire facility and the pool project debt service in 2026. For planning and discussion purposes, approximately $54,000 of an increase or decrease is roughly a 1% impact, again, to your total levy burden. The budget includes using $305,330 in reserve for CIP items, maintaining responsible usage of unassigned fund balance with the objective of incrementally reducing reliance on reserves to fund CIP. $500,000 of levy-supported expenditures has been incorporated in our non-debt funding to CIP, which reflects an increase of $100,000 over the 2025 CIP levy. And it funds items of vehicle replacement, equipment replacement, building repairs, parks improvement, sidewalk repairs, and contingencies. In addition, the city has borrowed roughly $1.3 million for street reconstruction annually. In recent years, the city has limited this borrowing to the amount of levy-supported principal being retired for each year. As discussed in the CIP presentation, it's recommended that we exceed this practice to $2.4 million as justified through the recommendation of a fire engine replacement. And then we did contraction of the street CIP then to allow for the East Main Street as the priority. In 2025, the anticipated principal payoff for the levy-supported financial borrowing is 1.328. So at the end of the day, what does the budget do and what does it fail to do? This budget maintains most city services, functions, and staffing levels. It incorporates a financially feasible 5-year CIP with assumed risk. It maintains a competitive compensation policy supporting recruitment, retention, and quality of services. It addresses concerns for continuity and public work leadership transition. It increases the tax rate by 3.3% with the addition of debt service for the fire facility and pool. It introduces adjustments in revenue streams to maintain services with increases in added fees, memberships. What it does not do, it does not fund all the required CIP needs as brought forward. It does not eliminate challenges for managing expectations of growing new services without reduction in existing services. It does not fully address a long-term plan for streets and building replacement, and it does not solve our concerns with our partial leased fleet. So these are, again, the very big, broad pictures and the narrative points that we wanted to make transparent in the discussions. Tomorrow, when we sit down and we start looking at the line items, these are the stories that are hidden in the matrix and the code of why are these adjustments made and where are these funds coming from. So With this, I would turn it back over to yourself, Madam President, for questions or concerns or things in detail that you would like brought forward or prepared for the meeting tomorrow.
Okay, questions, concerns? I think I'm going to start down. Bob, do you have any immediate questions, concerns, things you need additional information on?
Yes, Clint, it was on slide 34. I did have a question. And you don't need to put it up, but it was, gosh, it was like expenditures.
Response and recommendation.
Yeah, I forgot I have it right here. It included $225,000 for the pool, but it didn't include, like the 6.9.
Yep.
Was,
This is the amount you have to pay.
I can let Nicola answer this, but it has to do when we arrive in actual payment.
Oh, so that is actually the first interest payment on the pool borrow as projected in the pre-sale report from Ellis for the 2025 borrow. So that includes the pool and CIP.
okay, it was just a coincidence that it was 225, which was the same as that other amount that was borrowed earlier.
That is a coincidence. Yes.
Okay,
And so the debt service above that on the fire station is also a principal and interest payment or just an interest payment?
Great question. I'd have to take a look quick. Oh, I can bring that back for tomorrow's discussion.
Okay. Okay, Bob, any other questions you have right
the
now?
other question was, when you're talking about what goes into how much levy can increase, and new construction was part of that formula. That include residential and commercial construction?
Yes, the
Will
net
it-
new construction.
And
Yes.
will it include the construction of the pool? Because that seems like there will be a lot of new construction.
It's
I
on.
think it has to be taxable construction.
Oh, okay. Thanks. Those are my only two
We've
questions.
had a lot of construction, recently. I mean, school district and so on, and big engineering, but none of that helps us, unfortunately.
Okay, Steve, any any questions on, not quick, or any questions on the presentation?
Yeah, just with the total debt service, is the number that you have on slide 16, does that include the pool and the firehouse debt? Was that added in for the 2026, or was that not included there?
So the debt service adjustment graph on slide 16 is showing the projected, I should have highlighted that the red oval is a projection for the debt service for 2026. We don't have we haven't sold that 2025 debt yet, so we're not.
It's not included in that.
It is included, but it's
Oh,
an
it is an
estimate.
estimate.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Great. And the only other question I had was what, at the very end, you mentioned something about the leased vehicle issue. Just, can I?
So part of our fleet is leased through Enterprise. Several years back, we incorporated a lease type of a function. At the time, it was projected that we would be able to lease a vehicle at a government rate and get a vehicle at a reduced rate, operate that vehicle for a couple of years, and then be able to go and sell that vehicle on the market for almost a marketable type of thing. And that gap would almost provide us with, not zero operating costs, but we'd be coming out way ahead. Well, then a pandemic happened and these other types of things. So now that gap is gone and they don't really reduce a reduction in government rate. We still have a fleet of fine-looking vehicles, but we're kind of operating now with a lease type of a model, and to try to free up enough CIP to regain that full equity is kind of the challenge that we're at, because we're paying kind of operationally in a lease type of a mode rather than trying to get enough upfront to, if we want to, buy those vehicles out. And it becomes a challenge even in trying to, when the lease comes up on, well, do you want to upgrade now to a newer model and sell yours back? Financially, that is a challenge to try to continue to operate as it was intended to be.
Kathy?
A couple things, on, just for point of clarification, on the very end, sorry. Slide 39, increases the tax rate by 3.3% with the addition of debt service for the fire facility and pool. Can you clarify, is that 3.3% because of the pool and the fire station, or is it 3.3 plus?
3.3 is included in that number for a total rate increase.
Okay.
But again, that's the rate increase, but our total levy increase is more because we're adding a lot more equalized value with the.
Yes, I just wanted to clarify the wording that
Yeah.
it was included.
Yep.
And then the other thing, in preparation for tomorrow night, we heard about support for CIP for the library. My concern with that, my question is, the city doesn't own that building. So if there is an issue with a leaky window, that seems to me to be the landlord's problem, not the lessee. So I don't know what the contract with the developer, what we are responsible for.
Our contract would suggest that it is our responsibility. We had a window of approximately 3 years where we could have pointed out any type of a manufacturing or construction defect. It was not noticed within that time or brought to the attention, so by contract, the window appears to be our issue.
I agree with Kathy on that. It seems like if you're renting an apartment and there's an issue with the roof or the carpeting, that is something the landlord pays.
I guess maybe part of me would like maybe go back to the developer, because the city every month writes a check for rent for over $18,000.
I don't disagree with your sentiments and your perspective on it by any means. I just know legally what the language states, and having talking with our city attorney on it, does not appear that sentiment is supported by the contract that we have with the property owners group.
Specified in the contract that we have to maintain.
Yes, and you have to imagine from their perspective, the contract is put in place with intentions to will that portion of the building to us. So, that was the anticipation, is that, well, it's going to be yours. So our renter-tenant relationship is kind of a temporary on, eventually this is going to be yours. So we're not going to dress it up and take on these added encumbrances and expenses in something that we want to then give to you. But I can provide council members that would like a copy of the agreement by all means.
Any other questions, Kathy? Tony, questions?
I just have one on the,
Pull your
No.
microphone down just a little bit.
oh yeah, sorry. The SRF and the moving of what is ambulance services and building inspectors, are there any negatives to moving it to a different form of funding?
I wouldn't say it was as negative, but it's a good question. If once so the accounting rules require that the program that's moved to qualify as a special revenue fund has to have a dedicated revenue stream, and that has to be assigned or committed or restricted for use. And once it's in its own special revenue fund, if it accumulates fund balance, then there would need to be a valid reason for moving that fund balance out of that fund and back into the general fund. So it wouldn't be, we'll just move it every year. It doesn't work that way. The idea or the concept is that is now designated funding for that program. And any accumulated fund balance could be used in future years to support the program, or maybe it would be moved for a special reason once in a while to the general fund.
But the majority of the, I mean, the ambulance fund is a 0-0, right? We basically charge what we basically get in what our bill is.
It fluctuates. It
Okay.
fluctuates, and I think we've generally collected a little bit more than we've had to spend. So we do have some, and right now we are tracking that as restricted for use. So if we charge an ambulance fee and we don't use all of that ambulance fee for our ambulance payment to Southwest Health, we're not just throwing it in the general fund bucket. We're setting that aside. So we're doing it right now, but after it goes to a special revenue fund, it would happen automatically. It would have its own fund number, so it would all be cleaner.
Other questions, Tony? Lynn?
I don't have any questions. I just wanted to hone in on the library concern. Just think that it would be worth considering additional funding for a project that we have invested in. I mean, I wasn't here when I think I moved to Platteville when they were building that library, but I wasn't on that part on the board or on council, but just being on there now and seeing what's happening to the building. And I was amazed that the way the contract was worded also, where I'm thinking as a renter, when anything breaks, that they should fix it, but we're responsible for it. And I think it's used primarily by a lot more people than we believe. And I just would hate for something that small that we would fight over, okay, should they do it or should we do it, turn into a catastrophe for us later on. If we could fix it, let's just fix it. Let's get it going. We need the money to get it going. I just want to just push that in there. But yeah, other than that, no, I think this was put together well. I'm ready for tomorrow.
And questions?
I have no questions because I spent 2 to 3 weeks on COVID.
Oh, well, I'm sorry about that.
So,
Okay, so
wish it upon you people, but it's not very good. But
Okay.
there are sick people out there.
there are, I agree. I visited one in the hospital yesterday. Okay, I have a couple of questions and some of it may be just language questions. Some of it is maybe, on slide 22, you talk about, reallocating funding from a print publication to social media archiving. I recall discussions about how are we promoting our city and how can we do better at informing everyone. And so I have concerns about how you inform everyone, especially since some of our population doesn't necessarily look at websites or Facebook or the other things. So I guess I'd like to help. I guess I'd like to understand how we're going to replace that print. Right after that, in the police department budget, there's a reference to an increased cost associated with language line. Have no clue what language line is, but maybe somebody could explain that. And then there's also increased expenses with Grant County for radio tower maintenance. And my question is, were we ever informed that we were going to have to maintain these towers? I mean, why, these are Grant County towers. I guess I'd like to know the amounts and how that was arrived at and all of those kinds of things. And I understand, we now are paying for our own dispatch services, but we get charged for dispatch services from the county. Now we're going to be charged for radio towers that are county. So I'm just kind of wondering how that all happens. Under the public works budget, we talked about street lighting. Could someone help us understand the percent that's now been transferred to LED lights and if that's saving us any money? So I know we had LEDs at one point on Water Street. I don't know if we have other areas where we have LEDs. On the Parks and Forestry and Recreation budget, there was something about anticipating some other program changes based on, so when you say program decreases, you're talking about that which is operating like softball or flag football or something like, yeah, I just wanted to verify that. And then on your review thing on slide 33, under the Public Works, you talk about the Assistant Public Works Director, but kind of tacked at the bottom of that is increases taxi bus, $5,600 and I think $39. But there was no, I mean, that's really not because we're going from a to Assistant Public Works Director. I don't think. Is that a separate? I mean, it says increases taxi bus. So I guess I have to ask about increasing taxi bus. And I think that's all the note. You told me to make notes, Clint.
That's good. Thank you.
Yeah, this is your fault because I made notes as we went through. That's what I have. I would echo that I have some concerns about at least the amounts that are being allocated or have been suggested as allocations for the library and for the museum in terms of their ongoing allocations. My understanding, my recollection is that when we allocated $15,000 a year for the airport, we did that based on the fact that the airport can get, on occasion, gets these AIP funds, airport improvement funds. And most of the time, those require a match of an amount, 10% or 20%. And so in order for the airport to build up enough money to be able to apply for those grants when they came due, they got 15,000. So they kind of that was kind of that thing. I guess I'm a little concerned that we would do 15,000 for the airport and only 15,000 or 20,000 for the library. It seems to me that those are more citizen participating activities. I'm not trying to diss the airport. I'm just saying it doesn't seem somehow equivalent, or I don't know the word to use. And further, I don't think that groups, I think that there are basic responsibilities the city has to some facilities. Like, I think that the city should replace carpet in the library. I don't think we should rely on, I don't know, fundraising to replace carpet. I mean, it's one thing to do extras with fundraising. It's another thing to do what might be called basic, like HVAC for the museum. I mean, do you want to give to the HVAC, Kathy? Yeah. So I guess I'd express my concern about that and hope that we can find some different solutions. Ken?
I guess I have the question on the airport. No, we're giving $15,000. Then a while back, they said they had a leak in their supply. So what, is that our responsibility to start providing money to them because they have a leak in their fuel supply?
I'm unfamiliar with a leak in the fuel supply. I think there was.
Not here. Airport. Who goes to the airport?
Nicola is the supporter for the airport.
You have that answer? You go out there and.
Many years ago, maybe like in 2018, there was a problem with the fuel farm, and then the new fuel farm was constructed using funding from the state through the Airport Improvement Program. Is that what you're referring to, sir?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. So back in 2018, I believe it was.
Well, it was recently in our notes, not too long ago.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, we're tracking on a sinkhole by the fuel farm that we're tracking.
There's a sinkhole by the fuel farm, but it's not because it was leaking or anything.
No.
No. There was no leak.
I don't recall a leak recently. There has been some ongoing maintenance things with the fuel farm, and then there is the sinkhole that they are working on. They've had it evaluated and have determined that it's not a threat to the fuel farm.
Okay.
One other comment, going back and forth with multiple things about, the face-to-face with library and the airport and that type of thing. At what point do we draw the line of our citizens having to pay? Because there's a proposal, a membership fee to go to the senior center. I think that might go over like a lead balloon
I
with
think, it-
them, but
Yeah.
it's, it impacts a certain group. And if there's a definition where there's a discount for local citizens, taxpayers, but then we look at the inclusive playground, we know that that attracts people from out of town and there's no fee at all. So I guess I'm just bringing up the point that we have to recognize that how much, I mean, do we charge services for the library? So
You don't
it's
charge
sort of like
fees.
how, I kind of question maybe the direction that we go, that we feel we have to charge an extra fee to belong. I understand sporting, if you want to participate in a sport, there's a fee. To get a pool pass, there's a fee. But okay, you don't pay a fee to go to the library. Now you're going to have to pay a fee to go to the senior center. What criteria are we really using?
My understanding about the fee for the senior center was to try to bring some, for lack of a better word, equity to the fact that we're providing senior services for people from outside of Platteville. So my understanding was that this would be more directed at, and we haven't seen a fee schedule, but we know that we serve, that there are lots of people that come from other communities where senior services aren't provided. And so the question then becomes to me, how much do our taxpayers pay so that, and they're not paying anything.
So then it begs the question, why wouldn't there just be a fee if you,
Be a question.
I mean,
I hear you.
A library fee?
no, I'm talking, because I'm picking on the senior center because it was pulled out. So
Oh,
I don't know. I guess we'll have to see what the fee schedule is proposed.
I am curious. I know a lot of communities have lost their senior centers throughout the state. Is that because those are city funded, or are those for-profit agencies that senior centers in towns and then close when they can't make a
The
profit?
older people like me.
I know
So we can pay every month. So for example, my wife and I pay $150 food. Senior center. Well, it's one of the best things you can possibly have for the older people.
For Meals on Wheels?
That's
that's a
ARDC.
nutrition program.
Worst things we did here in Platteville is to take the senior center away from by the library. That was one of the worst things we did. We stuck them partly over in the armory.
That wasn't my question.
That's not a good place because they have lead in the basement. How do
Okay.
you like your food with lead?
Okay, I think we have some questions. We have a meeting tomorrow night. I think you guys have heard some of the questions. And so, Nicola, you have things you're going to pass out as we leave the, I would take at this point, a motion to adjourn.
Move, sure.
Second.
Okay, motion by Ken, second by Kathy to adjourn. Colette will vote.
Okay, Pop,
Yes.
Parrot,
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I thought you said Aaron. I'm like, who is Aaron?
This was what-
Yes.
McFall,
Yes,
God,
Doss,
you all know.
thank you.
Doss,
Yes. Say yes.
Gates,
Yes.
Sorry.
Killian,
Yeah,
Say
yeah.
yes.
Badger,
Here.
Yes.
motion
I vote
carries.
for it.